Today we're watching the most epic deaths in history. Now, you guys don't know me. I'm a fucking not health nerd, but history nerd. I do like history. More specifically, I like Eastern history, like the Hunan dynasty and the uh what is it? The Three Kingdoms. I like Three Kingdoms. I like the Heian era. Uh, I like a lot of Eastern fucking warriors. I don't know what it is about them, but they just seem so damn cool. Much cooler than Western warriors. Like the knights are cool, but nah, we like them Eastern guys. Guan Yu, my boy. Lu Bu, my guy. Even though he was crazy, but you know,
Today, we're going over the most epic deaths in human history.
word.
Number 1, Benkei. We're starting
Okay,
this video off with a story of the greatest wingman in human history.
really.
Dark night in 12th century Japan, and a Buddhist monk named Benkei is wandering the streets of Kyoto. With an abundance of temples dotting the city, monks are a common sight, but this guy is different. At 6
How
foot
so?
6, he towers over everyone around him, and he's carrying a weapon. A cross between a sword and a long spear called a
True.
naginata.
You know, I didn't even think about that too. Like back in those times, 6'6" was probably tall as hell. Like probably the tallest human you could have seen. And judging by his weight and how they drew him, he had to been of like 230, 250 max. You know what I mean? But nowadays you see like 7 footers and it's like, oh shit. But 6'6" back then, that must have been probably the tallest man you've ever seen alive. So
His
that was
face
crazy.
gives off the vibes of someone on a hunt more than someone seeking enlightenment.
Bro
And
looked
it
like a
turns out
monkey.
he was out hunting that night for his final victim. See, Benkei was actually a Sohei, a warrior monk trained and battle-hardened in combat. Through his encounters with samurai, he's decided that they were an arrogant class, unworthy of their
Mm,
status in society. The world would be a better place with less of them around, and this led him on a
fair.
bloody quest to duel and defeat 1,000 samurai, collecting their
Damn.
blades as trophies after each victory. At this
Sick.
point, he had collected 999 swords and was out that night looking for his final duel. While walking near Goto Tenjin Shrine, Benkei hears the sound of a flute, and when looking to see who is playing it, he finds a small, thin samurai. Around the man's waist is a beautiful gilded katana, the perfect piece to finalize Benkei's sword collection. He
True.
immediately challenges this samurai to a duel. The small man puts away his flute, and surprisingly, he agrees
He
to
about
fight.
to slash
The
his
two men
shit.
walk together to Gojo Bridge and draw their weapons. Full of confidence, Benkei rushes in, but despite towering over the samurai, Benkei is swiftly
Yeah,
defeated.
he about to
Instead of taking
destroy
his
him.
life, the samurai just turns and walks away.
Nah, that's
Benkei is
disrespectful.
shocked and left in disbelief. In the following days,
Bro got
these
embarrassed.
unfamiliar feelings turn to anger and frustration. How could he lose to this tiny samurai? He had defeated much larger men in the past.
Bro got
He decides
outskilled.
to stalk the grounds of Kiyomizu-dera Temple, waiting for the samurai to appear so he could take his revenge. Eventually, the samurai does show up, and Benkei immediately challenges him to another duel.
Bro lost
Then
again.
Benkei loses again.
Bro got shit on.
Humiliated, he bows in defeat and tells this samurai that he'll abandon
This is
his
looking like
life
Sekiro all over
and
again.
follow him as one of his retainers. The samurai, who turns out to be Minamoto no Yoshitsune of the legendary Minamoto clan, agrees. Benkei joins him on his adventures, and the two become inseparable. They go on to join Yoshitsune's half-brothers and fight in the Genpei War against the
Holy
powerful
shit.
Taira, a clan that had killed Yoshitsune's father when he was just a baby.
Bro got his ass
5
whooped
years
twice and
fighting,
decided to
the
follow
Minamoto
him.
clan emerges
You know what?
victorious,
If you
and
can't
one
beat
of
him, join him.
Yoshitsune's half-brothers, Yoritomo, becomes shogun.
True.
The end of the Genpei War had an unintended consequence. Without a common enemy, jealousy and suspicion soon turn the brothers against each other, and Yoshitsune and Benkei find themselves on the run, being pursued by Yoritomo and his men. They
Tragic.
eventually find protection under another clan called the Fujiwara, and the pair spend a few years in relative peace in their domain. This ultimately did not last, as with a lot of pressure and probably a lot of bribes, Yoritomo finally convinces the Fujiwara to turn on his
way.
brother.
Elmans,
Fujiwara no
Elmans.
Hidehira, the man who was once their protector, betrays them, and on June 15th, 1189, at the Battle of Koromogawa, Yoshitsune and Benkei find themselves trapped and outnumbered 5-1, with 500 of Fujiwara's men surrounding their castle position. The
Sheesh.
forces clash, and Yoshitsune's men put up a heroic effort. Benkei in particular is a demon on the battlefield, crushing enemies who are on average more than a foot shorter than him. But
My guy's
despite their
like
best
that.
efforts, Yoshitsune's men quickly begin to fall. With just a handful of retainers remaining, Yoshitsune realizes the battle is already lost. he turns to Benkei and tells him he plans to commit seppuku within the castle. He'll need time to prepare, and Benkei understands the assignment. He walks to the bridge that serves as the only entrance to the castle and stands alone against Fujiwara's army. Fujiwara signals a charge, and wave after wave of his men.
Damn, he is just like that, bro.
One after another. No man can make it past him.
Jeez.
In some stories, he's said to have single-handedly slain 300 soldiers on that bridge.
300 is
Benkei
crazy.
stands stoically behind a pile of deceased Fujiwara warriors, beckoning more men to cross. And despite orders to do so, none of the Fujiwara's men answer his call. They all know that stepping on the bridge was a death sentence. Fujiwara, realizing his men are now too afraid to attack Benkei head-on, calls in his archers. They'll take him out from a distance.
That makes
instead.
sense.
The archers let loose a barrage of arrows that find their mark in Benkei's chest.
He just stands there? Nah, he's legendary for that.
Arrows, but still, nothing changes. Benkei's body
Bro just eating arrows
but is still
like they're sandwiches.
Time passes, and both sides stare at each other across the bridge. Nobody dares to make the first move. Finally, Fujiwara orders some of his men onto the bridge, and they reluctantly do as they're told. As they slowly approach Benkei, he makes no motion to ready himself. They creep closer, and when they finally reach the massive monk, they discover that while he was still standing, he was already dead. Benkei,
oh, he died while he was standing up? That's insane.
Had positioned himself to be supported by his spear even if he was no longer alive.
That's some legendary shit.
No pain or emotion while being hit with countless arrows, all to give the illusion that he was ready to fight anyone who dared to cross.
That is some legendary shit.
Yoshitsune had enough time to commit the seppuku ritual properly, maintaining his honor. What a wingman!
I'm saying.
Yisun Shin.
That was fast.
The 16th century in Korea was a strange mix of insane political corruption and relative peace for its people.
Is he spanking him?
Korea
What the hell?
was a loyal tribute state to China and the Ming Dynasty.
Is that Samsung?
To the east, the Japanese were busy killing each other in the Sengoku Jidai. So
that makes
they weren't
sense.
a problem either. Aside from those pesky Jurchens who were constantly invading from the north, the rest of Korea was pretty boring and uneventful with no major threats. The boring, no wars way of life led to many men choosing to pursue careers as scholars and government officials. As
that makes sense.
The best way to gain power and influence. This
an age of peace.
And corrupt political class and an extremely weak military led by generals who had never seen real combat. This combination of governmental corruption and a weak military would end up causing all kinds of problems in 1590 when Hideyoshi Toyotomi fulfilled the dreams of his former lord Oda Nobunaga and reunified Japan, bringing an end to the Sengoku Jidai. The Japanese, for the first time in over 100 years, were not at war with each other.
They were about to go ape shit.
Who are they going to fight now?
They were about to go ape shit.
Hey, before you brutally invade Korea and stuff, can I ask you, how many spam emails or texts do you get a day?
A lot. A lot.
I think you need to check out Incogni. See, anytime
you
submit your
talk to me.
info online to
Site
for a new service, there's a chance that they're selling your.
I'm okay. Let's just skip to the.
Incogni comes in. Once you submit your information, you can give them permission to act as your takedown agent and like a with Incogni today.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Use the code SeriousHistory with the link in the description below and get 60% off an annual plan. What an awesome deal. Okay.
What an awesome deal.
You can get back to your invasion now. Toyotomi begins sending messengers to Korea, saying that
we're going to war.
China, and that he expects the Koreans to
we want that ass.
Else. Now, remember, Korea was basically like the Puerto Rico of China in this era, so they couldn't really help Japan conquer it. Not like they wanted to, anyway. They thought the Japanese were primitive barbarians. Plus, those idiots don't even know how to sail anyway, right? Oh. In 1590,
that was funny.
Hundreds of Japanese ships are spotted off the coast of Busan.
Slaughter them all, man.
This is an invasion.
He said a training expedition.
Japanese fleet. Two of Korea's top admirals freak out and sink their own ships so they won't
that's
fight
wild.
the Japanese. And just like that, half of Korea's naval fleet is gone.
Jeez, bro. Their military was that bad back then? God damn.
Forts and cities on their march to Seoul. The Korean military is no match for Toyotomi's men, who were all veterans of a 100-year war. Korean casualties.
Yeah, them boys were max level. Like Korea looking like a bunch of level 5. Just got the game during Christmas type shit. These guys been duking it out since the beta, the alpha. So they are veterans.
few survivors. Within 3 weeks, they've marched to and conquered Seoul. A few weeks later, they take Pyongyang and are at China's doorstep. The fall of
Jeez.
Korea seems inevitable. But when all hope seemed lost, a man determined to defend his homeland and drive out these barbarian invaders rose to the occasion. A man who quite possibly was the greatest admiral to ever live. His name was Yi Sun-shin. So Yi Sun-shin's story is pretty interesting because unlike most heroes, he wasn't necessarily liked by the elites at the time.
True.
In fact, they kind of hated him, but for all the wrong reasons. Basically, early in his military career, he was so good at inspiring his men and leading them to victory that he made everyone around him look bad by comparison.
Damn.
Remember, corruption was a big problem during this time. So out of
Also, respect is a big thing in Korea, I hear. Like, if you can't, like, tailor to the people above you, they are gonna immediately think that you're taking over their position or you're a threat to their position, or like anything of that nature. Like, as much as the Korean manhwas and all that stuff that I read, a lot of it seems to be true because it's tailored everywhere. Like, you see it in every manga, you see it in every like webtoon. It's just, if that guy is doing better than you got to get rid of him. You know what I mean? Don't add him to your roster. Get rid of him so he's not a threat to your position. It's a lame ideal, but
jealousy,
whatever.
a general falsely accuses Yi of deserting the army in battle, and the king believes it. He strips
course
Yi
he
of his
does.
rank, has him thrown in prison and tortured. This
Damn.
experience would probably make most men quit the military altogether, but Yi was eventually released.
Most men
He
would
managed
go
to
against
climb
their
his way back
military
through the
at
ranks
that
to
point.
commanding a small fleet of ships by the start of the Japanese invasion. Now, despite the fact the Koreans were absolute trash at fighting at the start of this war, they did have
Jeez.
one huge advantage over the Japanese. They'd been dealing with Woko pirates along the coast for years, and because of this, they had developed ships called Panoksun, and later the turtle ship that were specifically designed to combat Japanese naval tactics. See, the Japanese weren't used to fighting at sea, so they
No,
just
hell no.
stuck to what they were good at. close
They were
range
always
combat.
fighting each other.
Their strategy consisted of shooting at people with their rifles and boarding other ships, and engaging them with swords and spears. Their ships were more like transport vessels rather than battleships.
True.
The Panoksun, on the other hand, was a floating fortress armed with cannons and was built in a way that made boardings impossible. These ships were a huge
Pretty
reason
clean.
why Admiral Yi was able to have so much of his success, and are basically the only advantage the Koreans have. And they already sank over half of them themselves. Anyways, Admiral
okay.
Yi was not a coward like the other two admirals. and
He was
instead of
like
sinking
that.
his ship, he launched
Legendary.
his fleet of 34 ships head first towards the Japanese and began attacking them along the coast. His
True.
capabilities as a naval commander are obvious right from the start. In just a few weeks, using tactics to bait the Japanese to sail into vulnerable positions, he single-handedly sinks over 200 Japanese ships with no losses
Sheesh.
of his own. In battle after battle, he is
How much do you think of this as actual, like, factual evidence? You know what I mean? Like, when you hear somebody say they've killed 300 men, right? Or when you hear somebody say they've killed over, like, even over 50 is like a lot of people. You would think nowadays killing 50 people, that's light work. You take a handgun and go to it. Never mind. That was gonna be a bad joke. But yeah. you nowadays you take a handgun and you could just slaughter 50 people like that. All you need is 50 bullets, you know what I'm saying? You don't even need that many, to be honest. But back then they were really like hand-to-hand combat, and you needed so much stamina. Imagine how long they fought for. Going through 50 people is a lot of stamina and a lot of fucking work. And they were really just built different back then. Holy.
vastly outnumbered, yet sails away victorious every single time. Yi is the sparkling piece of glitter embedded in the turd that is the Korean military, and by the end of the year, he had sunk 350 Japanese ships. Yi's efforts, along with the help of Chinese reinforcements, allowed the Koreans to drive the Japanese soldiers all the way back to Busan, and by the end
True.
of the year, the war entered somewhat of a stalemate, with the Chinese and Japanese trying to negotiate a peace deal. So things are going pretty good for Yi, but remember the two admirals who sunk their own ships at the beginning of the war? Well, one of them, named Won Gyeon, is insanely jealous of Yi's success.
Of course. He's a fucking
jealous,
loser.
He starts talking shit about Yi to the king every day. And when peace talks with China fail and Toyotomi begins a second invasion of
Bro, I'm blaming the king partially here too. Like, I mean, there's probably no way he would have found out that the guy killed or sunk his own ship, but like, just knowing that information, and still listening to this loser while this other guy is like putting in so much work to get rid of the enemy invasion. It's like, bro, how much of a loser king are you? Like, you can't make a judgment for yourself. You can't really like assess the situation and really look at what's going on around you and really see who's like who really wants to be a Korean still. Because if it weren't for this guy, then they'd all be Japanese by now.
Korea in 1597, Gyun and other government officials frame Admiral Yi as a
That's
traitor,
insane.
and the king agrees.
Of
For the
course.
second time in his career, Yi is stripped of his rank and sent back to prison where he is brutally tortured again. He's set to be executed,
Bro can't get
but the
nothing.
king has a change of heart, and he instead sends Yi back to fight as a common soldier. A
What?
humiliation worse than death. With Yi out of
At that
leadership,
point, I would have
Gyun is
traded.
put
I'm
in
not gonna
charge of the
lie.
Korean fleet. And
Getting
as
backstabbed
you can
twice
guess
is
by now,
insane.
He was pretty terrible at his job. He drank heavily, made poor decisions, and disrespected his men.
Of
Many
course.
of Yi's commanders refused to fight under such a downgrade. And what made things even worse for Gyun was that during the stalemate, the Japanese who had watched Admiral Yi wreck their over and over again had actually learned how to fight at sea. Their new
Oh
ships
my
now had
goodness.
cannons, and they began to use the same strategies Admiral Yi had used against them. This all comes to a head in the Battle of Chilcheoliang, Gyun's first attempt to attack the Japanese fleet. With 200 ships and the best of Admiral Yi's men, Gyun
He
sails
lost.
out to confront the Japanese, and he immediately falls into a trap.
Oh
Trap
my
they learned from
goodness.
Fighting against Yi. The entire Korean Navy is decimated, and Gyun
Yeah.
is last seen being chopped to bits by Japanese soldiers while trying
Deserved.
to stay.
Absolutely
He
deserved.
may have messed up.
No shit,
reinstates him
Sherlock.
as fleet admiral, and he takes command of the pathetic remains of the once undefeated Korean Navy.
How do
He's
you
left
bring
with just
this back
13
up,
ships
bro?
And a few hundred demoralized men. In the following battle, outnumbered 25-1, using superior strategy, Yi
Why has
manages
this
to
been
sink
not made into a
31 of the
movie?
333 Japanese ships against
Legendary!
a single ship of his own. This victory gives Yi time to rebuild his navy, but not gonna lie, things still look pretty grim for the Koreans. But the next year, Hideyoshi Toyotomi becomes ill and dies. His
Lucky.
last
They
official
got
order
lucked
being to
out.
withdraw the Japanese army from Korea back to Japan.
They got
Yes,
lucked
this is
out.
the
If he
time
didn't get
Japan
ill,
will
they
drive
were
the
definitely
Japanese
gonna win
out of
that
Korea
war for sure.
good And mounts a final offensive against the retreating
That is
Japanese
so
forces.
unfortunate
After
for
decisive battles
the
in Liang,
Japanese,
Yi
but
takes his position at the top
fortune
of the flag
smiled
ship,
upon the
Southern
Koreans
Africa,
that day,
begins a war drum to
or that
push his
year,
allied
rather.
Korean and Chinese fleet forward. Admiral Yi's ship leads the charge, and he personally takes out 10 Japanese ships. The Japanese are in full retreat, and Yi beats his drum with intensity. Victory is within his grasp. After 7 long years, Korea will finally be free of these invaders. But suddenly, he's hit in his armpit by a Japanese
No
musket ball.
way.
He realizes the wound is fatal, and he turns to his son and nephew and says, "The war is at its height. Wear my armor and beat my war drums. Do not announce my death." His son and nephew quickly carry his body below deck, and his nephew,
Damn, that's such an
Japanese
unfortunate
armor, quickly returns
way to
the
die.
admiral's position and resumes beating the drum.
Getting shot in the
These
arm,
men continue to
damn.
fight, and the Koreans
Like a
drive the
random
Japanese
stray
out of
bullet.
Korea for
That's
good.
so unfortunate.
Undefeated in battle, Yi dies below deck, listening
He's
to the
like
sound of his
that.
drum, knowing that his homeland was finally free.
Dying. Hold on, hold on. Dying to the sound of the drum that you like a beat. Maybe you made a beat. Like imagine like you were making like music back in those times, right? And you start playing your music, and you're just dying to your music being played. You know what I mean? That's kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie. That's pretty fucking cool.
Number 3, Ben L. Salomon.
Oh
We
shit.
generally cover stories from more ancient times on this channel, but
True.
this story from World War II undeniably belongs on this list.
Okay.
This is the
Talk
last
to
stand
me.
of a dentist turned field medic who
A
took out 98
dentist?
Japanese soldiers before falling to his own
Jeez.
Ben L. Salomon was drafted into the United States Army in 1940, just 3 years after he graduated from the USC Dental School. Salomon
Wow.
proved to be a model soldier and showed himself to be very skilled with both rifle and pistol.
Hey, bro was cleaning teeth and cleaning heads. If you get what I'm saying, golly.
Quickly promoted, first to lieutenant and then to captain in 1944,
Damn.
serving as a regimental dental officer of the 105th Infantry Regiment. In June of 1944, Solomon and the 105th were deployed into active combat in Saipan. The fighting
True.
in the Pacific was infamously bloody. Casualties on the island were extremely high, and with so many soldiers having much more pressing issues than a root canal,
Yeah, I'm
Solomon
saying.
volunteered to replace the 2nd Battalion's field surgeon who
It's like having a dentist on standby must probably be like the most not useless job ever, but like we need an actual doctor, not someone who can fix my teeth, I guess. You know what I mean? And I can't imagine there was much medicine back then in 1944 anyway. So they probably just gave you some pain pills or they just numbed your mouth. You know what I mean?
Who had been wounded. By July, both the Americans and the Japanese had suffered heavy casualties, and the
Sure.
remaining Japanese troops on the island came to the realization that there was no path to victory. They decided on a final banzai charge, a mission with the sole goal of killing as many American soldiers as possible with no plan of returning. Early in the morning of July 7th, 1944, the remaining 4,000 Japanese
I wonder
soldiers
who led
began their
that.
final attack. Solomon's field tent was positioned.
Do you think there was a way for them to escape? Like if they really wanted to, because you know back then the Japanese had crazy amounts of honor. They prioritized honor over everything else. So do you think, as like any history nerds, type in the comment section below. Do you think there was any chance for them to escape? Because I feel like they would have just got hunted down by the U.S. Navy anyway.
Just 50 yards behind the front.
But they could have
line.
escaped on like
Within
small
minutes,
boats.
His tent quickly filled with over 30 injured troops. He did his best to tend to the wounded, but the Japanese soon broke through the front lines. He looked out of his tent
Fight
and spotted
for
a Japanese
honor!
soldier bayoneting a wounded American who was lying outside of the tent. Enraged, Solomon picked up the rifle of one of his patients and fired at the Japanese soldier, killing him. Suddenly, 2 more Japanese soldiers popped into Solomon's tent and he fired on them, taking them out as well. Like zombies, 4 more enemy soldiers then crawled into the tent from the sides, and Solomon took 2 out with his rifle and another with his bayonet. He hit the 4th soldier in the stomach with the butt of his gun, and a wounded soldier he had been treating finished him off. Realizing the situation was only getting worse,
Bro
Solomon
said it's time to
instructed his
take it
veterans
into
to
my own
evacuate all of
hands.
the wounded men. He would stay behind to give them cover so they could retreat. Solomon grabbed a rifle and joined the front lines. When he saw 4 men manning a machine gun fall to enemy fire, he rushed to the gun and manned it himself.
I can already imagine it.
Until he was eventually overrun by enemy soldiers.
Jeez,
Days later,
that's so
when
unfortunate.
the Americans returned to the battlefield, Solomon's body was found slumped over the machine gun with 98 dead Japanese soldiers piled in front of him.
See, okay, this makes sense. Like him having a machine gun loaded with so much ammo to just plow through whoever came in front of him, that makes sense. You know what I mean? But having a guy with this sword slice through hundreds of enemies is insane. Not only would your blade rust after so much, or not only would your blade rust after so much blood being on it for so long, but the amount of stamina you would need to go through 300 men is insane. Like, your adrenaline is already shooting through the roof. Can your adrenaline stay high for that long? Because I can imagine this isn't like a one-stop shop. This is like 12 hours of just non-stop fighting.
Body was ravaged with 76 bullet holes and many bayonet wounds, 24 of which he may have suffered before actually dying. The blood trail on the ground showed that Solomon had repositioned the machine gun multiple times while mortally wounded. Despite saving many lives that day, Solomon was denied the Medal of Honor due to the Geneva Convention that no medical officer can bear arms against an enemy.
That's so lame. What? Fuck the Geneva Convention, bro. What kind of lame ass rule is that, bro? Give my man his props.
Despite multiple recommendations from generals throughout the years, he remained a footnote in history until 2002, when Solomon was finally posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor from President George W. Bush.
True.
Years later.
Damn, he ends videos fast. Holy. But true. W. Ben. Shout out Ben, man. Probably the most important Ben in fucking history. You know what I'm saying? This is a great video. This guy has his drawing is shit, but he's so consistent with his drawings, it doesn't even matter. So, you know, shout out to this guy. I wonder if he's gotten better over the years of him drawing. I don't know if this is him drawing or not, but shout out to him, man. This is an amazing video. Good script, good editing, great pacing. It's a little fast, actually. I'm not gonna lie, but overall, solid video, man. Solid video.